Hello, welcome to Mirror Podcast. This is episode 2, and I'm so glad you've chosen to spend this evening with me. It's a perfect time to slow down, reflect, and let God's word meet us right where we are. So if this is your first time listening, this podcast is Mirror for a reason, because sometimes the most important conversations are the ones that makes us pause and honestly look at ourselves. Tonight, we're exploring a very honest question. Yes, God spoke, but what are you doing? Think about that for a moment. If you spend time in spiritual spaces, you've probably heard people say things like, God showed me something about my future. I believe God revealed where my life is going. I feel God told me I'm going to become this. I heard it. God said I was going to become this. I was going to become that. Well, there's nothing strange about that. Throughout history, people have believed that God reveals direction, purpose, and destiny. For some people, that moment of revelation becomes the beginning of transformation. Well, for others, it becomes the end of their effort. They hold tightly to what they believe God said, but their lives remain exactly the same. Yes, no growth. No intentional preparation, no visible development. Years go by, and the only thing that remains active is the story of the prophecy, not the work of becoming the person who can carry it. And that's where this conversation becomes necessary. So please listen to me. Because a revelation about the future is not meant to replace responsibility in the present. It's meant to awaken it. So when God shows someone a glimpse of their future, it's not just encouragement. It's also an invitation to participation, an invitation to grow, an invitation to develop, an invitation to ask difficult questions like, who do I need to become for this future to make sense? What habits must I build? What skills must I develop? How must my character grow to carry this destiny? Because the truth is, the future often requires a version of us that does not yet exist. Now let's take a moment and think about the story of Joseph. This is a character that we all love most. We like him. Joseph had a dream when he was young. In that dream, he saw his brothers bowing before him. That was a picture of authority, influence, and leadership, but the dream did not immediately translate into position. Instead, Joseph entered a long process. He experienced betrayal. He lived as a servant in another man's house. He spent time in prison for something he didn't do. At first glance, it might look like his life was moving away from the prophecy. Yes, but something important was happening during those years. The year of formation. Joseph was learning how to manage responsibility. Joseph was learning administration. Joseph was learning leadership in an environment that required patience and integrity. By the time he stood before Pharaoh, Joseph wasn't just someone with a prophecy. He had become someone capable of managing a nation. The dream showed the destination, but the process produced the man who could handle it. Now, let's look at King Saul. Not the Saul of Tarsus. Now, King Saul. Saul also began with tremendous promise. He was chosen and anointed as the first king of Israel. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. He stopped developing the inner character required for the role. King Saul became insecure. It was very obvious. He began to act out of fear. He disobeyed instructions that were meant to guide him. Eventually, the very kingdom that had been entrusted to him was taken away. That should teach you something. A promising beginning doesn't automatically lead to a meaningful ending. What happens in the middle? The growth, the discipline, the transformation matters just as much as the calling itself. Now let me take it closer to everyday life. Many people sincerely believe that God has shown them something about their future, which is not wrong. Yeah. Maybe it's leadership, maybe it's influence, maybe it's building something meaningful. It could be marriage. Those convictions can be beautiful and motivating, but belief alone doesn't construct the future. Daily habits do. Character does. Discipline does. What you do on ordinary days is what slowly shapes whether that vision becomes real. That future is predictable just by seeing what you do daily. Because God is not a God of confusion or disorder. Everything He creates follows order, structure, systems, process. Seed becomes trees through growth. Leaders emerge through development. Influence expands through preparation. So if someone believes God has shown them a picture of their future, the natural response shouldn't just be excitement and crossing your leg and waiting for the future to meet you. It should be curiosity. Curiosity about the kind of person that future requires. Curiosity about the skills that must be developed. Curiosity about the discipline needed to sustain that level of responsibility. Revelation should push us toward preparation, not passivity. Do you know what? God cannot be stranded. Peradventure you decide not to do anything. If you fail to prepare, ladies and gentlemen, God is already preparing somebody else. So don't assume that because God has called you, He hasn't called another person. Of course He has. His plans do not stall. His purpose do not fail. But the question remains, are you growing into the person that future requires? So if you believe God has shown you something about your life, if you believe there is a picture of a greater future ahead, then pause and reflect. Not on the prophecy itself, not on the vision, but on the person you are becoming. Because the real question isn't simply what was revealed. The real question is, are you preparing yourself to carry it? Thank you for spending this Sunday evening with me on Mirror Podcast. And remember, sometimes the most important direction in life doesn't come from looking ahead. Sometimes it comes from looking in the mirror. Ensure to subscribe. Please share this with someone you love. Thank you.